There is a moment, often unnoticed, when prayer becomes something else. Not an encounter, not a surrender, but a habit without heart, a sound without soul, a movement of the mouth that no longer moves heaven. This is the hidden crisis among many believers today. They still pray, but their prayer no longer reaches. Pope Leo XIV calls it the great tragedy of mechanical faith. He warns, too many pray as if God were an audience, not a father. Too many speak but do not listen. They say the words, but their hearts are on the clock. Have you felt this? That strange emptiness in prayer? That silence that feels cold, not sacred? That sense that your words hit the ceiling and fall back? You are not alone. Many Catholics, faithful and devout, have confessed this quiet agony. They still pray the rosary, still go to Massachusetts, still fold their hands. But the fire has gone out. The Church teaches that prayer is the raising of one's mind and heart to God. But what if the mind is distracted and the heart is elsewhere? It happens subtly. We begin with good intentions, a daily Hail Mary, a whispered morning offering, a grace before meals. But slowly the habit replaces the hunger, the gesture replaces the gaze, and soon we are speaking to no one because we no longer expect anyone to answer. Saint Teresa of Avila warned, prayer without attention is like a body without a soul, and the soul grows weary in such prayer. We begin to dread it, delay it, or recite it quickly like a task to check off. Pope Leo once asked a crowd, "Why do you pray? To be holy or to be done?" That question is sharp but sacred. It invites us not into shame, but into honesty. If your prayer has become dry, return to the well. If your prayer has become fast, slow it down. If your prayer has become noise, bring your silence. The Lord does not need long words. He waits for real ones. One "Jesus, help me," whispered in longing can rise farther than 1,000 rushed rosaries. It is not too late. Your prayer can still reach heaven. But it must come from your heart, not your calendar. We live in a time of noise, and often even our devotion becomes part of that noise. We scroll through scripture quotes but never sit in silence. We light candles but not consciences. We post prayers online but forget to pray alone. It looks like faith. It even feels like faith. But Pope Leo XIV warns, devotion that stays at the surface will never heal the heart. The Church does not call us to gestures only. She calls us to transformation. And that cannot happen without depth. St. John Paul II once said, "It is not enough to say prayers. One must become prayer." That is the difference between superstition and sanctity. One says the right things hoping for protection. The other says the true things hoping for communion. Ask yourself, do you pray to feel better or to be changed? Because change is the fruit of true prayer. But that kind of prayer costs something. It requires stillness. It demands honesty. It invites God into the places we'd rather hide, the fears we ignore, the sins we excuse, the griefs we bury. Superficial prayer avoids these places. It schemes the surface. It repeats the words but never stops to hear the response. And this is why so many feel disconnected. Not because God is far, but because they have stopped going deep. Pope Leo tells of a priest who once came to him in sorrow. "I pray the breviary every day," he said, "but I feel no fire." The Holy Father replied gently, "Perhaps the fire waits for you after the words." What he meant was this: prayer begins when we stop performing, when we stop rushing, when we speak not just from memory but from hunger. So today, go to your usual place of prayer and leave your script behind. Speak one sentence to God, from your real soul, even if it's ugly, even if it's, "I don't feel you anymore." That honesty is the doorway to deeper prayer. Do not be afraid. God is not looking for eloquence. He is looking for your truth. There is a kind of silence that is not emptiness, it is invitation. But in today's world, silence is feared, replaced, covered, even in prayer. We fill our devotions with noise, background music, hurried words, distracted minds. And in doing so, we often miss the one who speaks without speaking. Pope Leo XIV laments this deeply. God whispers, but the soul must be quiet to hear. He is not condemning music or movement. He is revealing a truth older than cathedrals. The soul grows deep in silence. St. John of the Cross taught this path. He said, "Silence is God's first language." And yet many today have never once sat in stillness before the tabernacle, never knelt in their room without words, never waited in prayer with no agenda, just presence. Why? Because silence reveals. In silence, distractions rise, hurts surface, pride is exposed, and most of all, silence shows us our hunger. That ache we've been covering with activity. That ache for God Himself. But it is precisely in that ache that God waits. The Church teaches that contemplative prayer is the simple gaze upon God in silence and love. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. Pope Leo tells of his own practice. Before dawn, he sits in a plain chair before the crucifix. No words, no devotions, just listening. Because, he says, before I can speak to the people, I must be pierced by the silence of God. And in that silence, clarity returns. You do not need to become a mystic to enter this silence. You only need to stop, to put the phone down, to close your eyes, and to say with your stillness, "Speak, Lord, I am listening." Start with 5 minutes. Even if your thoughts wander, even if the silence feels awkward, stay. That awkwardness is the world leaving you. That discomfort is your soul adjusting to its true home. And soon, that silence will not be empty. It will be full of peace, of presence, of God. There is a hidden temptation among the devout to perform prayer instead of live it. We become so used to sounding holy that we forget to be honest. We use pious words but hide a proud heart. We kneel publicly but resist conversion privately. Pope Leo XIV warns of this sharply. A prayer prayed for appearance becomes a mask, and the Lord is not fooled by masks. Jesus Himself said it. When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father in secret. Matthew 6 verse 6. Why? Because real prayer is not about being seen. It is about being known. St. Augustine confessed, "Too late have I loved you. I was outside, but you were within." Prayer that is outward only will never touch the within. And a soul that prays to be admired, even unconsciously, begins to drift from grace. The Catechism speaks plainly. Hypocrisy is the refusal to let God's truth penetrate our life. And prayer without vulnerability can become exactly that, a performance. You may say, "But I don't mean to be fake." No, of course not. But the enemy doesn't need to tempt you with sin. He only needs to tempt you with image. Pope Leo speaks of a man who prayed the rosary each day in church. His devotion was admired. But his family said he was cold, harsh, and angry at home. He prayed with his lips, the Pope said, but his heart was not in union with Mary. Because Mary never leads a soul into harshness, only into humility. This is the test of authentic prayer. It transforms. Not instantly, but truly. So today ask yourself, is my prayer changing me? Am I becoming more gentle? More forgiving? More hungry for the Eucharist? If not, then pause. Return to the beginning. Strip the performance away. Tell the Lord, "I want to be real." And begin again. Because only truth can rise like incense. Only truth can open heaven. And only truth can make you holy. It lies in your drawer. It hangs in your car. Maybe it rests under your pillow night after night. The rosary, weapon of saints, comfort of sinners, crown of the poor. But what if it no longer moves your heart? Pope Leo XIV asks a piercing question. Have you turned the rosary into a routine instead of a rope? Because that's what it is. A rope tied between you and heaven. A lifeline in the storm. A way to climb, bead by bead, out of despair, out of confusion, into the arms of the Mother. But for many, it has become mechanical. Rush. Distracted. A task, not a treasure. St. Louis Delaware Montfort called the rosary a spiritual sword. But a sword must be wielded, not merely recited, not merely counted. The Church teaches that the rosary is a meditative prayer. Each mystery is not just a title, it is an invitation to walk with Christ, to feel the joy of His birth, the sorrow of His passion, the glory of His resurrection. But when was the last time you felt it? When was the last time a mystery brought tears? Or made you stop mid-decade and whisper, "Jesus, I'm with you"? Pope Leo tells of a woman who had prayed the rosary daily for years, but with no change. One day in adoration she asked, "Why do I feel nothing?" And in her heart she heard, "You pray the rosary as if I were absent." She wept. She slowed down. She began again, this time inviting Mary to walk with her. Her prayer was never the same. So how do you revive a dead rosary? Slow down. Announce each mystery with reverence. Imagine the scene, like a child at her mother's feet. And ask at each bead, "Mary, teach me to love Him like you do." You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Then your rosary will come alive. And it will lift you, as it lifted generations before you. Some people weep when they pray, not from pain but from presence. Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Ignatius, Saint Faustina, Saint Therese. These were not overly emotional souls. They were pierced souls, because when the heart finally touches heaven, it breaks, not in despair, but in beauty, in awe, and love. Pope Leo XIV reflects on this often. The soul that does not weep may still love God, but the soul that weeps has seen him. Now not all are called to tears, but all are called to depth. And tears, when they come, are not signs of weakness. They are signs of truth. The Church never demands emotion, but she treasures compunction, that sweet sorrow that leads to love, that burning awareness of our sin, not to shame us but to bring us home. St. Peter wept when he denied Christ. Mary Magdalene wept at his feet. The thief on the cross wept and entered paradise. Tears have power when they rise from real love, but many of us resist them. We keep our hearts guarded even in prayer. We say the right things, but we never let ourselves feel the weight of mercy. What if you let your heart break before God? What if you stopped pretending and just said, "Jesus, I need you. I've missed you. I'm tired." What if that one moment of truth released what years of routine never touched? Pope Leo says, "The Lord does not look for polished prayers. He looks for pierced hearts." So don't fear the moment your voice cracks, or when your prayer turns to silence, or when a single tear falls during the Our Father. That is holy ground. That is the beginning of transformation. The saints wept not because they were broken, but because they belonged. And so do you. You kneel, you speak, you wait, and nothing comes. No comfort, no answer, no sign, just silence. Many Catholics experience this and quietly wonder, am I doing something wrong? Has God turned away? Is anyone listening at all? Pope Leo XIV speaks directly to this ache. When prayer feels empty, God is not absent. He is deepening your desire. The Church has long taught about this mystery, the dark night of prayer, when God withdraws consolations not as punishment, but as purification. St. John of the Cross endured it. So did Mother Teresa. So did many saints whose holiness was forged not in ecstasy, but in endurance. Why does God allow this? Because love that survives silence becomes strong. Because faith that holds on in dryness becomes pure. The Catechism says, the heart must learn to abandon itself in faith. This is not passivity. This is trust. Real, burning trust. When everything in you wants to quit but you stay anyway. Pope Leo tells of a young seminarian who came to him in spiritual dryness. "I pray every day," he said, "but I feel nothing." The Holy Father replied, "Good. Then now you can pray not for feeling, but for love." This is the holy threshold where many turn back. But you must go forward. Keep praying. Even when dry. Even when distracted. Even when alone. Because in that hidden silence, something sacred is happening. Your soul is being trained to love God for God, not for what He gives. And one day when the silence lifts, you will see, you were never abandoned. You were being drawn deeper, into a love that doesn't depend on emotion, but on surrender. There is a kind of prayer that breaks through heaven, not because it is eloquent, not because it is long, but because it is true. The saints call it the prayer of the poor in spirit, the cry of the soul that knows its need and dares to whisper, "Have mercy." This is the prayer that touched Jesus on the road, the blind man who shouted, "Son of David, have mercy on me." This is the prayer that stopped Jesus in the crowd, the bleeding woman who said, "If I only touch his cloak." This is the prayer that pleased Jesus in the temple, the tax collector who beat his chest and said, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." Pope Leo XIV tells us, God is not drawn to noise. He is drawn to truth. And the soul that speaks the truth even quietly pierces his heart. So do not wait for perfect words. Do not wait until you feel holy. Speak from where you are. If you are tired, say so. If you are angry, say so. If you are lost, say so. If you are grateful, weep it out. This is real prayer. And it changes things, not always the world around you, but always the world within you. So begin again. Tonight, kneel by your bed. Hold your rosary, not as a duty but as a thread. Say one Hail Mary, and then speak to God in your own voice. Even 1 minute of truth can heal 10 years of silence. And remember, your Father is not far. Your prayer has not been wasted. Your voice is still heard. And heaven waits for your next word.